Why would a woman who always sang about love live a life of sexual conflict and isolation? Agnetha Fältskog, the golden-haired angel of ABBA, once made millions of men in the 1970s fall in love with every note she sang. But behind the scenes, her physical life was a long cycle of escape, emotional wounds, and lingering traumas that stretched across decades. No one knew about the secretive relationship with her personal bodyguard or the panic attacks she suffered when faced with intimacy. If you think you already know everything about Agnetha, this video will make you think again. Agnetha Fältskog's life once sparkled under the bright lights of ABBA's stage, but it was the hidden backstage of her marriage that held the deepest wounds and conflicts. They met in 1969 at a small music party in Stockholm. At just 19, Agnetha was a rising solo singer with innocent beauty and a crystal-clear voice, while Björn Ulvaeus was already known from the Hootenanny Singers. A glance, a simple melody, a touch in the midst of fellow musicians, and a fateful connection began. They fell in love quickly and publicly, the Swedish media calling them the golden couple of North European pop ballads. By 1971, they held a modest yet highly publicized wedding, covered as a cultural event by international press. But few realized that a tumultuous marriage was quietly forming behind the scenes. As husband and wife and bandmates, they were forced to appear perfect, smiling at the right times, holding hands just so, kissing cheeks for the cameras as though everything was flawless. In reality, Agnetha felt herself being swallowed by an exhausting work cycle and an emotional gap widening between her and her husband. They had 2 children together, son Christian in 1973 and daughter Emma in 1975. After becoming a mother, Agnetha hoped that maternal love would heal the growing distance between her and Björn. However, the outcome was the opposite. While she stepped back to care for their children, Björn remained consumed by writing, recording, touring, and social engagements. Gradually, they became more like colleagues sharing a home than a married couple. In one interview, Agnetha described this feeling. "I felt like a soul lost between the stage and the bedroom, no longer knowing who I was." The year 1976 became a psychological turning point when Sweden was rocked by a scandal involving big-name artists and tax evasion, including ABBA. Agnetha had to preserve her public image and care for her young children, while Björn struggled in private. Externally strong, she was internally fractured. A lesser-known moment occurred in 1978 during ABBA's UK tour, when Agnetha cried through an entire flight after Björn coldly said to her, "You should learn to control your emotions." In that instant, she realized that love was no longer present. Their divorce was finalized in 1980. The media reported it simply, and ABBA continued performing as if nothing had changed. But for Agnetha, it was a fracture that could never heal. She retreated from the spotlight, declined interviews, and eventually moved to Eckerö Island, where she could hide from prying eyes. During that time, she lived like a shadow, sleepless nights, sudden bouts of melancholy by the window, letters written but never sent. The intimacy between them had nearly vanished from 1977 onward, yet both chose to remain silent. A close friend once revealed that Agnetha said, "I felt like I was seen as an icon, not a woman." That wound could not be healed by any ballad. If you're intrigued by the story behind that dazzling exterior, subscribe to the channel now. The marriage between Agnetha Fältskog and Björn Ulvaeus on the surface once seemed like the perfect symbol of a romantic musical life. Two talented artists, both famous, building the dazzling ABBA empire together. But the more they lived under the stage lights, the greater the distance between them grew in the shadows of real life. The first significant event to expose the cracks in their relationship was the 1977 tour across Australia, a private nightmare for Agnetha. While Björn was enthusiastic about the intense schedule, Agnetha had to leave their two young children behind to perform in show after show, despite showing early signs of depression. On one flight, she experienced a panic attack due to turbulence in bad weather, and from that point on, her fear of flying only worsened with each tour. While she struggled with the anxiety of being a young mother away from her children, Björn dismissed her feelings, saying she was too sensitive and needed to be more professional. That emotional neglect became a silent wound that deepened over time. Their marriage didn't break down in loud arguments or scandalous affairs. Instead, it was worn away by the disciplined, relentless rhythm of a performer's life, the kind that slowly drains intimacy. As ABBA soared to international fame following their 1974 Eurovision victory, Agnetha became an icon of beauty, sex appeal, and femininity in the eyes of the public. But to Björn, her once devoted husband, she no longer seemed like a wife in the traditional sense. She became a colleague, a brand image, more than a partner. The intimacy between them began to disappear. They slept in separate rooms during tours, and even when back home, their busy schedules meant they led separate lives. They shared the stage far more often than they shared their hearts. A silent but deeply symbolic milestone came with the release of The Winner Takes It All in 1980, shortly after their divorce. Though Björn wrote the lyrics, many believe the song reflected Agnetha's inner voice, a woman who had loved, had lost, and had forced herself to smile through heartbreak. The line, "I was in your arms thinking I belonged there," struck like a blow to an old, unhealed wound. The bitter truth was that they still had to perform the song together on stage, before thousands of fans, even though they were no longer husband and wife. That performance served as an unspoken conclusion to a relationship that once seemed dazzling, but, in reality, had been two lonely people quietly walking side by side for over a decade. After her divorce, though she maintained a gentle smile for the public, Agnetha entered a prolonged period of isolation. She never remarried, never went public with any new relationship, and spent most of her time in seclusion with her children on Eckerö Island. Yet, it was within that silence that a strange relationship developed, with a man no one would have expected, her personal bodyguard. Gert van der Graaf, a fervent Dutch fan, initially appeared only as a shadow at ABBA's final performances. No one knows exactly how he first approached Agnetha. All that's known is that, from being just another face in the audience, he gradually became her companion, protector, and appeared in most of her everyday scenes for years. Their relationship began quietly, neither acknowledged nor denied by either party. Those close to them described it as peculiar yet profound, marked by a significant imbalance in age, power, and emotion. Agnetha was in her 40s, while Gert was just entering his 30s. He wasn't just her bodyguard, he became someone who made her feel seen, watched, monitored in every breath, something she had never experienced in her marriage. However, that attention steadily became suffocating. Gert began controlling Agnetha's schedule, expressing jealousy toward her former colleagues, and would often appear unexpectedly at her home uninvited. The breaking point came when Agnetha decided to end the relationship completely in the late 1990s, but Gert would not let go. He was accused multiple times of stalking, harassment, and even trespassing on her private property, forcing Agnetha to obtain a formal restraining order from a Swedish court. Strangely, despite feeling hurt and terrified, she never publicly denounced him. Instead, she once said, "I think he's lonely, and so am I." That admission reveals the darkness in Agnetha's psychology. Amidst millions of adoring fans and fame, she still lacked a connection that felt real, even if it came from someone dangerous. This relationship became the clearest reflection of her inner conflict between the need for love and the fear of being possessed. For Agnetha, love was never simple, and sex, if it existed at all, was always shadowed by guilt and unease. In a rare interview, she said, "I love tenderness, but I fear being swallowed by emotion." This relationship with her bodyguard turned that fear into reality, a story the press avoided, but a chapter of darkness never written in her official biography. Today, Gert no longer poses a direct threat, and Agnetha lives quietly. She spends her days with family, music, and tending the gardens around her lakeside home. That peculiar relationship, though legally resolved, left scars in the soul of a woman long accustomed to distant gazes, yet profoundly lonely when close. It's a story no interview could fully capture. Only the silent spaces between her songs can truly tell it. Agnetha Fältskog, once a symbol of pure angelic beauty, was not only a timeless voice, but a soul that struggled between love, isolation, and a restrained instinct. From her marriage to Björn Ulvaeus, to the unstable relationship with her personal bodyguard, she did not live a loud or flashy sexual life, but instead walked a path of quiet chapters, filled with pain, yet marked by resilience. Behind ABBA's glittering fame was a woman who once feared love, who fell into loneliness beyond the stage, and who had to reclaim her own peace through both silence and courage. If you believe that the most powerful stories aren't found in the spotlight, but in the cracks behind the curtain, then subscribe to this channel now. Because many more lives, shaped by fame, love, and unimaginable twists, are waiting for you to discover behind the velvet curtain of their realities.